This is our tree planting kit, and you see we've got minerals and materials in all different sizes in there. This is about 25 pounds of material, and we're going to I'm going to need some volunteers. I want several people that will volunteer with a shovel. Okay, 1, 2. You want to finish eating first or not? No. Okay.
I'm faster, I'm thinking.
Okay, who else do we have on shovel? Can we get another person on a shovel? Okay. Now I can use a child, or I can use a woman, volunteer also. Okay, come on over here. Is it Cami, is it?
Yep.
Cami? Okay. All right. All right, I want to just show you this stuff. It comes in all different...
So now, before we start, that's the mix we made, or that's the mix we all can get? Or what is that mix
This, after we started teaching this method of planting, John actually suggested that it would be so much easier and less expensive for most people if we made a tree planting kit. Yes, we have a soil sample here. We did not take, we have 2 different soil tests here, but we know what this soil is like.
And that mix is according to that soil? Or
This mix is according,
soil?
no, this mix is according to this soil there.
Okay, so it'll be different for every soil.
It will be different for every soil unless you're ordering less than 3 kits at a time. Then it will be a one-size-fits-all. And then, now I know you come from California, from the desert area, and
Not from the desert area.
well, you're from farming area, but that would all be desert if we weren't irrigating. Yeah. So it's different.
It's 25% desert. Just your information, because we are in a severe drought this year. So.
Yes, we're in a very bad drought in California. Yeah, there. Anyway, so you can't put that through a fertilizer spreader, but this is just get a couple of handfuls and just throw stuff on the bottom here.
Generally, you'd use a 25-pound bag for any tree.
I want you to do the math.
Okay.
I want you to do the math on it. Okay. All right, Cammie's got a bunch in there now. That's enough for right now. But we're going to take 1/2 of what's in here. We're not going to measure it perfectly, but about half of what's here. And as we're filling this, we're going to use about half in there. Now, the other half, then we're going to have that layer of rock. Then we want pipe, because we want air down there. And we want peat moss over here to go in. So we want all of these different things to go in. We want some topsoil, which is over there. This is subsoil. We're going to have to steal some topsoil from the surrounding area there. That's compost. So do we have somebody with a shovel volunteering with the compost? Okay, go ahead. You're right there.
You want some now?
Yes, here's what I want to do. Let's take a shovel of that, and you got the topsoil, do you? Take a shovel of that, put it on in there, and
One each, or you want more?
just one for now. Just one for now. Okay, I need somebody to volunteer for the peat moss. Okay, I want you to take a shovel and open that peat moss up. Okay, Vic will get it for you. Yeah, a knife would be good. Here, a knife would be good. Yeah. Now just cut it wide open. Go ahead and cut it wide open. Oh, they've got it. I guess they've got it there. Okay. Okay. Let's get you right here. Right there. Okay. Now, what I want is for you to take a bunch like that and throw it in.
Okay.
You to take a shovel and put it in.
All right.
And topsoil, this. Okay, compost. We need a shovel full of compost out there.
Can we use coconut coir?
You can. You can, but most coconut coir is too high in salt. Okay, that's enough. That's
Hey,
enough.
Lynn, we're gonna try to get you mic'd up here. If
Okay.
you'd like.
Okay. Is it on now?
Not quite. I gotta get the speaker hooked up and then we'll be ready
Okay.
in just a minute.
You can hold that.
Let's try not to cut the cord.
Okay.
Oh, don't put it there.
I think it's better if we just move it in the back.
Maybe behind.
Okay. What do we have in there so far? We've got.
We got the magic, we got the
Okay.
dirt topsoil, and then we got some compost.
Okay. Let's start over again. Cammy, take a handful of that stuff and just throw it in.
Hey, Lynn, why don't you give it a try?
Okay. Are we on? Are we on? Not yet. Okay. Okay. Compost. More peat moss.
Switch the mic on.
Okay. That'll work. Thanks. Okay, we're on. Okay, you see what we're doing? We're just taking from each pile, and we're just going around the circle here. Okay. Next. Okay. Now we just want to keep going around in a circle here. Okay. So keep going. Cammy. Okay. Your turn. Remember, Cammy, we need about half of this, all of this in the bottom 1/3 of that hole. That's going to be pretty strong there. Another handful, Cammy. Okay. Yeah, let's just keep going around. Okay. Now, I'd like a big man to volunteer to get down in that hole and just tromp it around. Do we have a volunteer? All right. All right, we got. Okay, let's not bury here. Okay.
You just want to mix it, or you want to?
No, I just want you to tramp around on it.
All right.
Okay.
Should have had a heavier guy then, I guess.
All right. That's good. That's good. Great. Okay, we want to keep going around. Let's go around the circle. Cammy, more of this.
So Lynn,
Yes.
you watered that in instead of dancing on it. What if you watered it in?
That's a good question. What would happen if we watered this in? When we do construction and we're wanting to tamp it, ground down, we're trying to compact it, we use water and then we run over it and it packs it very much. Now we're doing a lot of work to get air into this, but then we'll have too much air in this.
Did we forgot to put that pipe in there?
No, okay, we need, who's our guy to tamp it down? Yeah. Okay, that's enough. Okay. That's about right. That's about right. Okay, do you think we're about 1/3 of the way of that? Okay, we're good. Now that's going to sink. Okay, we've got a lot of air in that, and over the next year this is going to sink. And okay, that's enough for now. We don't want to put any more in for a little while here. Now, who can tell me what goes on next? Layer rock. Okay. For this size hole, we need about 10 gallons of this rock. May need some help with that. Okay. Just dump it in. Okay, we got a lot of rock. That's good. Incidentally, if you've got a dead cat or a dog, that's a good place to put him. Or maybe you've got a neighbor you don't like. Yeah. Okay, who can tell me what goes on next? The pipe, yes. All right. Let's see. Let's tromp this down a little bit more. Tamper a little bit. Okay. This is going to sink.
This heavy enough to rock?
Yeah, a little bouncy. Yeah, that's good. If we don't do that, that's going to sink too much, and we're going to have a tree down in a hole, which we don't want. And so we really want to build this up some as we're doing it there. Let's throw some of these in. Just throw, Cammy, you're there. Just throw some of that in. Yes.
There's a question about the size. Does it matter how big the rocks are?
I've used everything from pea gravel to softball size rock. That's plenty, Cammy. That's plenty. Thank you. Yeah, maybe spread her out a little bit. Uh, there. Well, this is smaller pipe. This is 2-inch pipe, is it? There. Cammy, let's take one of those out. That's good. Okay, let's call that good. There. Okay, you can tell me what's the next layer that goes on there.
Don't you need rocks on each side?
Well, if they were bigger, I'd put rocks around it. I don't think we have any rocks to fit there, though, do we? There. That's good. That's good. When we put rocks on the end, it's to keep it from filling up with mud. Okay, we want air down there. That's the principle. How we get it doesn't matter. Pardon me? Yeah, you got a few bigger ones. Yeah, yeah, if it doesn't take us too long, we'll do that. I didn't drill. No, we didn't drill it in here. That's short enough that the air will get out. If you had long pieces, you'd need air in it. Yes.
If you used a tile in a trench, the tile would have holes in it, and then would you bring the ends up?
Yes, that's a good question. And I have done trenches where we use French drain, and of course French drain has holes all the way through it there. And then we daylighted it on both ends there. Ooh, you have anything smaller than that?
Yeah, she's clear.
Okay, that's good.
Are these too small?
That's good size, and that's good size, and let's call that good enough for now. There. Okay. Somebody want to get down there and just put rocks in the end there? That's good. That's good. Okay.
Is that too big?
We'll call it good. Yeah. Cammy, if you just put that flat rock, if you just kind of lay it over on top, that's good. Yeah, that'll keep from filling up with there. And then there's a rock over there. Let's put it. Thank you. That's perfect. That's perfect. Okay, who knows what goes in next?
Biochar.
And okay, we need topsoil, and we want biochar. The biochar is back here. Vic, you've got a shovel. You want to open that for us? Or a knife? You want the knife again? Here.
Can you talk about the biochar?
Yes, let's talk about the biochar. Okay, let's hold it up right there for the. That's enough topsoil for now. Okay, now there's no way of doing this and staying clean. Okay, there just isn't. No, not the whole bag, but let's. We can overdo the biochar. Yeah, let's use a shovel or something, Vic, and let's get a nice big shovel full of it in there. There.
What about biochar?
Okay, we want to. Okay, biochar is simply charcoal. Okay, and
Without lighter fluid in.
without lighter fluid. Yes, thank you. Without lighter fluid. Yes.
Not a silent lighter fluid.
This charcoal. Excuse me. This charcoal it's not a conductor. Okay. Partly what we were trying to do here is to create a break between what's below and what's on top. Remember, we're looking for the difference in the electrical charges here. And so that's why we're using the biochar here. We have not used the biochar before. It hasn't been available, but it's just now coming on the market. And if you have some charcoal from a burn pile you got in the backyard someplace, use it. It's good stuff. That's where I have used it. And I just took a hammer or something and tried to break it up, and it'll break up. Some of it'll powder, and some of it'll just break up into smaller pieces, and that's fine. Yes. No briquettes, please, because it's got chemicals in it. There.
How about wood, just from your wood stove?
From the wood stoves on, right, don't use the ash. Don't use the ash, please. The ash is going to change the pH and a lot of things, but use the charcoal there. Now, if you're getting charcoal from a burn pile back there and it has a few ashes on it, I'm not going to worry about that. But get the charcoal. Try not to get the ash there. Okay, let's put a little more topsoil on, and not anything else at this point. Just some topsoil. And let's see, we need a couple of strong guys to take that tree out of there. Okay, and we're about there. We don't fill that hole any fuller, I think, than where we are right now. There. Okay, nice. Okay, that's just about right. That's going to sink a little bit over time. Now, people often ask me, should I cut those roots? Should I mess that up some? Anybody have an answer for that? Yeah, we don't want to disturb those roots any more than we have to, except sometimes you get a tree like this and the roots have gone round and round that pot. Now, when we bonsai a tree, what do? We tie their roots, right? So if those roots have tied themselves naturally, I have gone, this one I don't want to disturb at all, but I have at times cut right straight through. I'll take a big knife and just cut straight through in maybe 2 or 3 different places there. Otherwise, those roots will continue to grow and cut off the circulation for things around it. You have a question, Jim?
That is a confirmed experience with lots of landscape, is that the girdling roots continue to girdle and they strangle the tree and
Yes,
it doesn't have longevity.
yes. Yes, it'll strangle the tree.
That should be observed now.
Yes. Well, you sound like you're knowledgeable on this, Jim. What do you think about those roots?
I don't have any objection to disturbing them a little bit.
Okay.
Not deep, but superficially.
Okay.
Because girdling roots, you can see it everywhere, probably all over the country.
Yes.
It's a very serious problem for the longevity of a tree.
If those roots are girdling that tree, just like Jim says, they'll continue to grow and to strangle that tree. So we don't want to do that. John?
I will say that Dr. Reams recommended, if you can, to use bare root as his preference with the planting method, and his strong recommendation was look at the tree on the bare roots and find the predominant roots go to the magnetic north because of the
Right.
flow, and so that'll make the tree grow better. So if you're doing that style, that's how you put the tree in.
Yes. Yes. Also, you'll notice when you buy bare root trees that are grafted, you can tell which way that tree grew in the ground by the graft. That'll tell you. Jimmy had a comment?
With the bare root transplant,
Mm-hmm.
those roots have elongated. The idea is not to coil them in the hole, it's let them be strung out.
Yes, we do want to string
That
them
maybe
out.
goes against what you're showing us here, but you might have to put minerals in your furrows, in your laterals. In other words, if
Okay.
your roots are spidered out
We're-
like this, then
We're going to put minerals around here too, Jim.
you have
Yeah.
a root. Okay.
Yeah. Well, I really don't want to disturb those roots unless you think we should a little bit.
No.
Okay. I think we're better off. I think we're better off the way it is there. I want you to notice that there's a plastic barrier on that. That's going to keep the mice from eating that bark. That's nice, tender tree, and it'll keep the rabbits off of it. There, Luke.
Lynn, do you have a guideline of how high you'd want the crown above the native soil? 2 inches, 3 inches? I mean, how much settling would be expected?
Tammy, can you see how far we are? Can you kind of guesstimate?
Lay the shovel. There you go.
Probably about 1.5 foot. Oh, this way?
Yeah,
2-3 inches, depending on which way you're looking.
That's about right.
2-3 inches. Yeah.
A little out of
Should be
plumb.
grade.
Does that matter?
Pardon me?
Does it matter if it's plumb?
Oh, we want to make it a little plumb too, don't we? There. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, Luke is suggesting that we have this tree a few inches
I'm asking.
higher. Yes, you're right on, though, but we need to be,
If it's going to sink,
I-
then it's
I-
going to be too low.
it's going to be too low. I think we need a little bit more soil now and bring this up just a little bit. And we want just topsoil on this, yes.
What I've heard about the nurseries is that where they tag it, that's supposed to be north. I
Could
don't know
be,
how that's
could
what they're
be.
supposed to do.
There.
How do you know that nursery did that?
That's the thing. That's supposed
Yeah.
to be the practice.
Almost all growers will graft it so that the graft is protected from the southwest. So that okay, let's put that tree back in and see what we look like now. Now, how far are we above the ground?
About 4 inches,
About 4 inches. Let's call that good. I think that's good.
4 or 5 inches.
There. Yeah. Okay. Topsoil. We want plain topsoil here now. We're going to run out of topsoil. We're going to have to dig.
Hey Lynn, are you not hitting the course with the transplant formula here, or is that advantageous to do here?
Do we have transplant formula we
Yeah,
put
I
here?
have a chart for you if you want.
Yeah, let's put some transplant formula on this here. Okay. Now we're going to run. Before you do anything more with that, let's get the transplant formula. Hey, when I first came across the transplant formulas, I was so pleased. You know, so often we transplant a plant and it goes through this shock, and it takes several days, sometimes a week to recover. I was so pleased because we just about eliminate transplant shock when we use the transplant formula. So use it. It's very, very good. I think we're there. Okay. All right. Now let's. Now we're all out of topsoil from the soil here someplace, and start putting it over here. Now we're ready for the other things too. So again, we need. Yes. Yeah. Where's Therese? Therese. We used up all the topsoil. Where can we steal some? Quite a bit, maybe a wheelbarrow full. Okay, let's do that. Okay, let's go ahead and put in the peat moss and the other stuff here. We need compost. Compost, and Therese told me there's lots of earthworms in it. If you don't have earthworms in the soil naturally, oh yes, great. Okay, wonderful earthworms, yeah. If you don't have them in your soil, go see Therese and get some. Yeah.
Go find the 4-year-old.
Yeah, 4-year-old, okay.
That's what they did yesterday.
Okay, let's get some compost, yeah, and peat moss there. And let's have a good load of compost here too.
Oh, you're gonna bring it.
Yes.
Boy, wonderful worms.
They're buddies, they stick together.
Yum. Huh? Okay, are we close to having topsoil? Topsoil. We need topsoil now. We've got everything else that we need there. Why the earthworms? There are two types of earthworms. There are hundreds of types of earthworms, but there are two types in particular that we use in North America. One of the little red wiggler worms. They're also called barnyard worms. They only go down a few inches in the soil. They'll die out very quickly if they're not fed and watered. And then we have the night crawlers that go way down deep into the soil. Now the barnyard worms, the little red wigglers, they'll eat the manure from the goats and the chickens and whatever here. The night crawlers refuse to eat that stuff. But the night crawlers will go way down into the ground. Now, sometimes when we were putting in septic systems or deep foundations or whatever, I'd be 6, 7, 8 feet deep in the soil, and I'd find night crawlers down there. In California, because it gets so dry in the summertime, they'll go down there and they'll make a little ball and they kind of hibernate because it's comfortable. The temperature is good down there for them, and there's a little bit of moisture, and so they'll stay down there until the rains come again. But they will open up tunnels, paths in the ground that your roots can follow, that water can follow, that air can go in, and they'll do a wonderful job of tilling that soil far better than you and I can do there. So it's a great thing to do. And 6, 7 feet deep, we still had topsoil.
Okay.
Yes.
So it's only
that would be-
because it's the clay, the low organic matter, that you're not using it?
There are less nutrients in it because it is the subsoil, but we're going to use it. But we're going to use it for a berm around here, okay? And we're on a little bit of a hill here, so we need more of a dam on the lower side, and then we're going to take this material. We're going to put more of this material here, the tree kit material here, and we're going to spread that all the way around in this circle because that little tree's roots are going to go out into this topsoil here. That's why I didn't want to take topsoil from here to put in there because we want it to go out there. Matter of fact, Cammie, why don't you take some of this and start putting it in a circle that is a good 10 feet in diameter. Yeah, don't put it in there, but put it all the way around the side here. Question?
What if you
Yes.
have, you know, we only have a little bit of stuff on topsoil and then it's all sand.
Okay.
Can you still, I mean, do this in all that sand?
All right, so we've got a little bit of topsoil and then lots of sand there. I often will steal topsoil from elsewhere. See, it's topsoil because it's got organic matter in it, it's got life in it, and this stuff I'm standing on has almost no life in it. We want life in this soil here. Okay, now we're getting the topsoil. Let's put more compost in now around that. Okay, let's get the compost going there. And Cammie, you can put a little bit of this now around that tree, right there. That's beautiful. That's beautiful compost. I'm glad to see that. There.
Got more on the outside?
Yes. We're going to use.
So
Yes.
this mix you have here is it's a so to speak, a one-time application when you plant in the future?
This is a one-time application, yes, Rick. And we want to make sure that we've got plenty of nutrients in that hole, but you notice that when we came right close to the root ball that we did not put a lot of this stuff in there. Now, what Cammie's doing is putting this stuff all the way around, and Cammie, you can actually put it from the circle that you made up to the tree now. You can put it in that whole area there. Now, Rick, that doesn't mean we don't need to feed this tree. That tree needs to eat next year and the year after and so forth. Trees need a lot of the same things we put in our garden, but they need some differences here too. Anyway, we'll go into more of that later here. Okay, do we have our tamper downer? Can we have him come up?
Camper!
He's on break.
There you go. Okay, now let's put topsoil and compost right up around that tree the best we can. And we'll use the rest of that material there. And Cammie's finished using the tree cut material. That's good. She did a great job. Yeah. Okay, are we totally out of topsoil? You know what? Let's call it good. Let's call it good. You might add a little later. There, yeah. Okay. Now we just need to tamp that down a little bit, but try to, let's not tamp it down because we're going to have a watering problem here. Okay. That's great. Todd, if you'll add a little more topsoil later. There. Okay, guys, everybody with a shovel, take my podium away. And on the outside of Cammie's circle, we want to put a berm. Okay?
On the outside or on the inside?
Oh, the outside. Outside.
Is that inside or outside?
Well, that's inside, but put it on the outside.
Would you usually
Okay.
want to get rid of the grass growing in and around it?
Yeah, I'll show you what we'll do with that in a minute here. Okay, now put more of it on the lower side than the top side. Okay. Now, what this is going to do, this is going to be an area for us to fertilize in, to hold the fertilizer for that tree. And if we ever have to water it, that's a place to water it so that it'll stay in.
A lot of places in the city are using this wood chip to mulch all around trees now at pretty significant depths. Good or bad?
Yes.
Yes.
You want to add more to that side? Or you guys?
Wood chips are a good thing in the right setting, but there are problems with it too. Matter of fact, where's Therese? You're looking at some of the problems from wood chips in that garden. And what are the problems with it?
Two main ones. One is it kept the soil temperature down too low for us, desperately too low. And the second, because our short season, at least here, it takes too long to break down. And so we've had it on there for over 2 years now, and it's still only a couple of inches. We did 6 to 8 inches, and only about 2 to 3 inches has broken down. And so we're now having to remove it and we're taking two and letting it be component somewhere else, and then maybe we'll bring it back after it's broken down.
So it takes a long, long time for it to break down. There, we'll see it in the garden when we go there tomorrow. There's another thing. That's good. Thanks. There's another thing that I find with wood chips in the garden or in the orchard too, and that is that they're a wonderful place for bugs and slugs and critters of every type to hide in and to breed in. And you don't need that kind of a problem. You're creating a problem for yourself with those things. Okay, because we're short on time, I want somebody now to take these leaves and just make a leaf mulch around this tree. There. So you guys with the shovels, yeah, we got an extra shovel over here. Somebody want to volunteer with that one?
Inside?
Well, yes, that's good. I guess we'll just do this by hand. Yeah, that's good. Okay, you asked me what we do about the grass, killing the grass in there. We just put a good mulch on it there. A leaf mulch is great. Alfalfa is my favorite to go around fruit trees. And keep the mulch away from the trunk of the tree. Okay, now this tree does not have any fruit on it now, but when it does have fruit, all you need is one little earwig or slug to come up here and make a little hole in that fruit, and you've lost that fruit there. So it's important to make sure we don't have that, and we're not growing that type of a problem there.
Is this leaf mulch something that you will keep on that tree forever?
I like a mulch there, but I want it back from the tree. from the trunk.
For
Okay.
years, forever.
Yes, but if we get into a situation where we're breeding the wrong type of pest here, we may take it off totally. Okay. There. Okay. We want to go inside, except for maybe making that mulch a little heavier later, and Todd will add a little more topsoil that this is taken care of now. We didn't put any water on this tree. Almost every time we plant, we're going to have to add water. That soil was relatively dry, especially the compost and other things there. And if there's a hose someplace close, we
You
could.
got about 10 gallons of water actually over there. It's in the bucket.
Okay, let's put it on, John. Thank you.
How thick do you put the leaf mulch? 2 to 3 inches?
2 to 3 inches is fine. Sure. Up to 4 inches would be fine, Chris. Let's see if we can get that down. Yeah, and close to the tree maybe. That's good.
Would you take the top inch or two off and put the leaves on so the grass don't grow?
That would be fine. Yeah. Probably about 30 gallons of water because of because we want it to soak into that root zone. We want to make sure that tree has adequate water there. That wasn't adequate water what we put on yet there. Okay, thank you very much. Let's go inside and we'll finish up there. Okay, fencing, trellising, watering, and planting. All right, we already said that if you don't fence the critters out, you're just growing critters, you're not growing vegetables there. So deer-proof fencing. Now there are lots of different ways to put up a fence, lots of different fencing materials there. This is one that I particularly like. It's a plastic fence. Okay, so this is for about a 40 by 30 foot garden, so we needed 150 foot of what's called fickle fence. And in your workbook, if you have one, there's actually a sample of that in there. Now, you can go to Home Depot and get what's called bird and deer fencing. And it's worthless for the deer. It'll keep them out until they walk through it the first time, and they can physically walk through it. And once they do, they'll be back every single night after that. I mean, you can repair it, and I've done that, and they just simply tear it down night after night. So it might work for birds, but it's not any good for the deer. So get the heavier gauge. The deer can't break it, he can't go through it. It comes in 7 foot tall pieces and 330 feet long rolls. And I don't know about Switzerland where you have it there or not, but maybe. Okay, and this particular garden we needed 14 T-posts. That's just a metal, T-post that we put in the ground. We need a fence pounder. We need PVC pipe to make a simple gate. You need a ladder to climb up on and put it down. And we use plastic zip ties for a number of reasons. They're easy to cut off and put on, and it could be that we need to take that fence down, lay it on the ground, and drive a tractor into the garden and rototill, then put it back up again. Okay, there's the fence pounder. Guys up on a ladder, here we are, putting this fence up. And you'll notice that this fence, once we stretch it out, it'll go from fence post to fence post. Now we're using 8 foot fence posts there, and we put it down into the ground. By the time you pound them down, it's going to be about 6 feet tall. A deer can easily jump over a 6 foot fence, easily jump over a 6 foot fence. So what deer won't do is jump into a small area. So there are lots of gardens that I see where we have only 4 foot fences, but maybe the garden is 10 feet by 20 feet. The deer won't jump into that small area. So if you're fencing 5 acres or a bigger garden, then on the inside of the fence, put a row of trellises or berry plants or grapes or something in there, but put it within that first 8-10 feet so that the deer will not jump into that area. He will not jump in, they won't jump into that small area there. Okay, now you can see my beautiful trench here for the gopher fence. I have yet to figure out a way to put in this gopher fence and make it look decent. They just look awful. Anyway, that will keep the gophers out and make this work. Okay, started a corner. Okay, we put in the measure about 10 feet and then put in another one. Now, sometimes I've stretched that to 15 feet, but 10 feet is a good distance there. Tie the fence to the T-post with zip ties, and we leave that excess fencing. All right, we said this was 7-foot fencing, and we went from 6 feet. I'm about 6 feet tall, so we put that down. And when the fence comes to the ground, you want it to come away from the garden. Now, the reason for that is this fickle fence here is a plastic fence, and deer and rabbit and skunks will come up to that fence and they'll try to get their nose underneath it. Now it's flexible, so they can. If they get their nose underneath it, they can get right into your garden there. But what happens is they come up and they stand on it and then they try to get their nose under and they're confused and won't get into it. The first year you may have to put some rocks or boards or something on top of that fence on the ground until the grass grows through it, and then you're pretty safe. They won't go through it after that. Okay, simple gate. Well, there's a lot of different ways to make a gate. We just used some PVC pipe, made a simple frame, and put a latch on it. Okay, deer can easily jump a 6 or 7 foot fence. They will not jump into small enclosures. So don't give the deer a clear area to jump into, and you're okay. Okay, here's the gopher fencing. This is 24 inches by 100 feet, and if it's 1/4 inch like that, that is better. If you if that stuff is too expensive for you, go get aviary wire, which comes in the same lengths, 24 inches wide by 100 feet of aviary wire will cost you $25, $28 for that roll, so it'll go a lot further. The trouble is that it's not it's chicken wire, but it's with the smaller openings. Now don't get chicken wire. Chicken wire will have openings about 1 inch. Gopher can go right through that. Make sure that this is a 1/2 inch or smaller if you use the aviary wire. It also will rust out faster, of course, much faster than the hardware cloth type of material there. Okay, use any fencing that has openings no larger than 1/2 inch. Use fencing that is at least 24 inches wide. If you have a real tough problem, in some places we've told them to go to 30 or 36 inch wide and make a deeper trench where there have been really serious problems. But for most gophers, this will keep them out just fine, the 24 inch. There, so 18 inches deep, stand the gopher fence in the ditch, and keep 6 inches above ground. Backfill the trench. The gopher won't climb that trench, that fence. He won't climb that. What doesn't work well? Shooting, trapping, poisoning, deterrence with noise, lights or smells, dogs, cats, and anything else you can put up there. I have not found anything that works real well. Luke?
Fencing and gopher fencing, do you put like in parallel with each other, put the gopher fencing just inside the deer fence or just outside the deer fence, or where do you?
Okay, good question. Luke says, can we put the deer fencing and the gopher fence together right there? When we do, we don't have any support for the T-posts. So either we put that gopher fence outside or inside by a few feet. Otherwise, you lose your support for the T-post. Good question there. Okay. Now, all of these work a little bit. And every now and then somebody will come to the garden and say, oh, I've got this wonderful solution I saw. And it'll be some type of little gadget, battery operated, and every few seconds it puts out a little zzz sound in the garden, and that's supposed to keep the gophers away. And so we tried it. We put it out. Sure enough, it works. Works for about 3 weeks until the gophers get used to it, and then they realize that that little zzz is telling them that's the dinner bell. There's food over here. And another thing that people tell me every now and then, oh, gopher plant, that's great. And so one area of my garden had a lot of gopher plant growing, and sure enough, the gophers would avoid the gopher plant, but they'd eat the potato plant that's right next to it. So I don't know any of these that work other than absolute fencing.
How about the gassing?
Oh, Elizabeth's got a good idea. There is a gopher getter, I think, that you can look at on YouTube. And what they do is they put propane down, and then they have oxygen, and so you put the propane and the oxygen down. You got to find where the gopher trails, where the gopher holes are. You put that down, and then they have a lighter, and of course it explodes, and boom, you've got gophers and dirt, and you're all over the place, and you got your garden tilled. Yes. Oh, what did he do?
The generator.
Oh, yes, okay. Another thing that we have used, if you'll take an internal combustion engine, maybe an old lawnmower or something, and go to the auto parts store, get a metal flexible hose that, that they would use for an exhaust there. So you hook this to your exhaust on the internal combustion engine, and you take that, and you've got to find the gopher trail underground, and you put that down. Now, I kind of like this because what you're doing is putting carbon monoxide down into that hole. Now, that's going to kill anything in that tunnel, including any babies that might be way back in there. By the time the fumes get past this metal and what have you into the ground, it's cooled off enough so we're not scalding any animals. And it simply puts them to sleep with carbon dioxide. So it's about as humane a way of doing it as I know. Again, the trouble with that is they'll come in from neighboring areas and they can multiply so fast, but that is a good way of getting used to it, getting things done there. We've had some people that would go to the pound and get feral cats and bring them home, and that seemed to be halfway reasonable there. They multiply too, yes. Now you got a different problem. Yeah. I did. Let me go back to this one. I was way up in Northern California by the Oregon border, and they've got gopher problems like crazy there. Anyway, this lady said, "Well, here's what I do." She would go out in the morning sometime into her garden and tromp down. You know how gophers will make a hill. So she'd tromp down all the gopher hills there, and then she'd go until the next morning. The next morning she'd come in, and she would know where the new gopher activity was, because anything that was there before she'd tromp down, so only new hills would she go to. She'd go there, and she'd set these little traps, the little gopher traps, there. You've got to find their tunnel going this way and this way, okay? Now, gophers are smart little creatures, and if they smell fresh air or they see sunlight, what they do is they'll take a whole load of dirt and they'll push it in front of them, and they'll go right over the gopher trap and right over any bait you have in there, and you won't get them. So you've got to find this tunnel this way and that way, and then put a board over it, and then put dirt back onto it so that no air, so they don't smell any fresh air, and they don't see any sunshine. Then they'll come through there, and either the trap will get them, or if you're using a bait, they'll find the bait.
Is that a gopher right there, or is that a chipmunk?
Oh, that's a chipmunk. That's a chipmunk, but he can do a lot of damage in the garden too. Yeah. Now, he's a cute little guy. He's a cute little guy there. He's finding something good to eat there. Okay. Okay, I guess we'll leave gophers and go to the next thing here. Okay, trellising. Trellising materials, I like about a 10-foot row of trellis because you can go around it easy enough there. Now, when you're using trellising material in the garden, when you want a trellis, you want a metal trellis. I like 6-foot tall deer fence because it's got big holes in it, and it's metal, it's strong, and you want to put a T-post on either side and one in the middle. Now, the reason for that is that by the end of the growing season, if you're growing this way, you're going to have lots of weight on that trellis. You're going to have a lot of things growing there. Tomatoes, cucumbers, doesn't matter. You're going to have a lot of weight on that. And in the fall, we're going to get some heavy winds. And so we don't want that to fall over. So about 5 feet apart is where you want those T-posts to go in. Now, another thing with metal fencing, if it were fencing, we'd put it down on the ground so rabbits and whatever wouldn't get through there. With a trellis, you want it off the ground by at least about 6 inches. So that's going to make the top of it about 6 inches, about 6 feet 6 inches. Well, most of us can reach that high fairly easily there. Above that, we're not going to be able to reach. So that's a good way of doing it. But you want it off of the ground so that you can put fertilizer down there, so that you can weed, so that you can work that garden there. Okay, what are you going to need? Fence post pounder, the T-posts, zip ties again, because at the end of the season, you're going to want to take those trellises out because you want to rototill in there, or you want to redo that garden there. Heavy garden shears, metal shears, and of course you need a step ladder so you can get up there and pound this stuff down. There. Okay, here we are in the garden putting in the trellises. Now this is 10 feet apart, and you can see we already have plants growing, and we were in a hurry to get this done. So here we are, we're putting, just kind of measuring it out. So this T-post hasn't been put in the ground yet. There, measuring it out, getting ready to go. Okay, cut the fencing into 10-foot pieces, pounded metal T-posts on either side, and one in the middle. Hang the fence on the metal T-post, wrap around a few inches on each end, and tie it with zip ties. Zip ties so we can take it off and get it out there easy. Hang that fencing a few inches off the ground. That's important to do that. There.
And why is that?
Off the ground?
Yes.
Because there are some fertilizers that we were going to want to put on the ground, okay? And we're going to want to put nutrient drenches down there. We also want to weed down there. And so if the fencing goes all the way to the ground, especially most deer fences have a smaller hole at the bottom than at the top. So keep it at 6 inches off, and it's much more comfortable, much better in the long run there. Yes, ma'am?
Do you use your fencing year after year for the trellises?
We do. We reuse that, yes. And, you know, we take it off out of the garden, set it aside, clean the vines off of it, yes.
Do you take your deer fencing down for the snow load in the wintertime?
I didn't understand.
Do you take your deer fencing down so the snow and ice doesn't tear it down?
You know, I don't have that problem. We get snow and ice there, but I don't have the problem you have here, so I don't. Oh, yeah, you're right. Okay, I'll have to apologize. My wife reminded me we did with the flexible fencing. We actually had fencing so heavy that it bent the T-posts down. Yeah, so I suppose if we just cut the fencing off, we could leave it on the ground. Yeah, I went up and knocked it off, but I didn't do it fast enough because it knocked the fence posts over there. Okay, you can see here that these are 10 feet apart here. These are beans over here and tomatoes here. And you can see we did not get that middle post in there, and that was a problem there. To get that middle post in, you'll appreciate it there. Also want to point out here, this, because I'm going to talk about this later, is that in irrigation, you'll see that this is dry here. Here we have T-tape on the ground for the irrigation, but this is dry here. Now up here we had a break in the line, and you'll see that this is all wet here. We had lots of weeds come up here. We had to keep getting after the weeds here, where over here we hardly had any weeds at all. If this is done right in most places, you'll eliminate a lot of weed problems there. Okay, sprinkling system. Okay, we need the T-tape. You can get that from DripWorks. We've got in your reference there, or you can call me. We actually make a irrigation kit. We used to make up some standard ones. We found out that everybody's garden is a little different, and so if you'll give me the dimensions of your garden, we'll just custom make it for you there. This T-tape comes in rolls that are 7,500 feet long. So, of course, that's way too much for most people, so we cut it off to the right length and put it in. Okay, you need a pressure reduction valve. That's absolutely necessary because the T-tape works on about 5 to 10 pounds pressure per inch of pressure. Coming out of your well or your regular water line, that's going to be at least 40 pounds pressure, and it might be as much as 60 pounds pressure. That'll make this thing not work. So you've got to have that there. We need PVC water pipe or a water line to there, and get an automatic timer. We're all busy. We've got work and vacations and all kinds of interruptions. And a few years ago, Elizabeth and I had sold our home, and we bought another house, but it had no spot for a garden. A friend of mine, a dentist, said, "Hey, Lynn, come up to my place. I got 5 acres and got plenty of room, and just put your garden in here." So we did. We went up there one Sunday and put in this garden. It's the first time I'd ever had automatic timer, automatic watering there. So we put this garden in, and because it wasn't right outside our backyard, it was actually 3 weeks before we got back to it. Now in California, that would have meant that anything that we had planted 3 weeks ago would have been dead. It just would have dried up there. Instead, we got back 3 weeks later and actually had little cucumbers that were not quite ready to pick, but everything was growing nicely, and because of the type of irrigation it was, there were no weeds. And it's just such a great thing. So you can go on vacation, you can have all kinds of emergencies, whatever, and come back and your garden is doing just fine there. So get that automatic timer. Now, Elizabeth says hire a professional to install it. We have more trouble with irrigation systems than almost anything else. Maybe gophers are more, but anyway, if you get somebody who's good at it, that'll help you there. Okay, here we are putting in the irrigation system, and just cutting off the T-tape. That T-tape is just rolled out. It just looks like a flat ribbon. It's plastic. When we hook it up to the water, it's a little fat round tube, and every 4 inches or 6 inches or a foot, just depends on how we order it, there's a little dripper. You want that dripper to be up. It's designed so that it goes up. That means if there's some debris that gets in the line, it won't clog up your dripper there. Now you need a filter on it. You don't want to put dirty water in it, but but it'll work just fine if you put it in right. I do like I do like the T-tape. There are soaker hoses that you buy, and when you hook a soaker hose up at the source of the water, you'll get lots of water, and 50 feet out there, you get very little. The T-tape, we could have a 200-foot run of it, and if it's fairly level, we'll get the same water 200 feet out there that we get here. So it's good. It's something that was invented in Israel a few years back, and many farmers are using it now. It also saves a lot of water in the process there. How long does it last? There's several different grades of it. It lasts, we've had it for 3, 4, 5 years in a garden or more. It's plastic and it's rather thin. If you hit it with a shovel or hoe or something, it's easy to cut. It's also very inexpensive to replace that piece. There's also, see this little thing here on the ground? Okay, so if we had a leak here, we'd cut it on either side, put this in the middle, and you've repaired it there. But the tape itself is so inexpensive that, well, when I was in Brazil, we had these long runs of this stuff. And at the end of the season, the farm manager there, he just took that stuff and threw it away. Just took new stuff there. So, okay, whoops, I got transplant seedings here. Okay, transplanting. Okay, mix your transplant water, 5 ounces of organic nutrient drench, OND. That's an International Ag Lab product with 5 gallons of water. Well, that's 1 ounce to a gallon, right? So 1 ounce to a gallon, and then you need about a half a quart of this, depending on what you're transplanting. And you pour that in the bottom of it, make your transplant hole, pour that in the bottom of the hole. And in this case, we used Jubilate. And you just sprinkle that in. That means we're putting life into that soil. We are seeding that soil with microbes that are going to help that grow. When I first came across this, I was so pleased because you just about eliminate transplant shock. Tomorrow we'll demonstrate, there's a new transplant formula, and I have not used it except that John just put some on this tree we put out here. It's a good product, and you'll be real pleased, benefited if you use that type of thing. Okay, okay, that's the roots. Okay, we've got that. Okay, there's the OND. We're planting in a greenhouse here. Here we're mixing that stuff there. There's a little 7-year-old girl. She's planting some, a bunch of different cabbage-type plants, cauliflower, broccoli, cabbage, Brussels sprouts there. Okay, planting seeds. Make a row with a trowel or your hand, whatever, a hoe. Pour the water in the row, okay? Put the water in the bottom of that row first, then put your Jubilate in there or your transplant formula, and then put the seeds on top and cover it according to the instructions. You'll be better off if you put the water in the bottom of the hole. Most people plant in relatively dry soil, and then they water the dickens out of the top. You'll be so much better if you put the water in the bottom. One thing, now we're doing the same thing with transplanting. We're putting the water in the bottom of the hole and then transplanting on top. One caution, if you are doing this, resist the temptation to work that soil. Remember we just talked about the way we compact soil is that we put water with it and then we work that soil with a big heavy equipment to compact it. Well, if you put that water in the soil and then you work it with your fingers even, you're going to make mud bricks out of it. So push relatively dry soil up around it and push it down a little bit. If you want to water more, that's fine. But don't compact that soil. Don't firm it too much there. Okay, here you can see we just planted a bunch of plants. We put Jubilate in the bottom of those holes, and we put the OND. And then now we're planting seeds over here. Here, this is clear water, okay? We're not putting any OND in there because that would be an organic nutrient drench and would have nitrogen. When we're planting seeds, we don't want to add extra nitrogen at that time. The transplants, that's good, they need it. But the seeds need to sprout without that extra nitrogen. But again, put the water in the bottom of the trench there, make sure there's enough of it so that it's going to start those, and then we'll plant the seeds on top. Okay, here, this is back in the greenhouse. Now, we go to a lot of work to get air into the soil. So you do not want to stand on your beds. The one time that it's okay is right when we're planting and we want good soil to seed contact. So, you know, we're not jumping on this. We just had somebody compact that soil out there in the tree there, but don't overdo it. We do want air to those roots there. Okay, planting tiny seeds. Tiny seeds, carrots, lettuce, mustard, may be planted easier by mixing the seed with sand in a cup or a can. So take the seed, the amount that you want to plant, and mix it with a handful of sand. And then after you make your row, just kind of make a throwing motion like that. And it'll take a little bit of getting used to, but pretty soon you'll get used to it. Now, why are we doing that? Because we want to spread that seed out. Let's take a 1 square foot of soil. And if I plant 100 carrot seeds in that 1 square foot, how many useful carrots am I going to get out of that? I heard somebody say none, and you're right on. None, because they're too crowded and they'll wind around each other and so forth. If I plant, let's say 10 carrot seeds in that same area, I'm going to get 10 beautiful carrots out of that area. So we need to thin it out there. Okay. Okay.
Are you at all concerned about the source of your water, fluoride, chlorine, that sort of thing?
Am I concerned about the fluoride and chlorine in my water? I absolutely am. I have, where I am now, we have irrigation water which comes from an irrigation ditch. So there's no fluorine or chlorine in that. When you're in town, you can't avoid those things. So one thing you can do, if you're for the chlorine, is get a couple of big plastic trash cans. If you can, set them up away so that you can get gravity feed from them. Fill those trash cans up, leave the lid off. The chlorine will off-gas into the air overnight. You've got to leave the lid off, though. It'll go away, and you can use it the next day. Now, a few parts per million of chlorine in your water will kill just about anything in the soil. We're going to great lengths to get life into the soil. So please be aware of that and get rid of the chlorine there. You can also get chlorine filters that may help. Do you have any other suggestions on that, John?
No, I think you got it covered.
Okay.
You just watch out for salts too. That's always an issue with water in certain parts of the country.
Yes, yes.
So can you use your EC meter to read your straight water?
Yes.
You can.
Yep. The lower the better.
Do you have a parameter for that, a limit?
Well, you got to do what you have to do. So, less than 500, and 200 is better than that.
Yeah. Yeah, in the west or in drier areas, we really have to watch the salt there. Some places the wells are even salty. Other places, well, where were we in Fallbrook, Southern California, LA area. The wells were salty. All of their water was salty, and they had to dilute it with fresh water that they get from Northern California just to make it usable at all in their homes. Fallbrook, okay, Fallbrook, I'll get to you in just a second. Thank you. Thank you. Used to be the capital for the USA of growing avocados. Their avocado trees are dying all through there, and it's because of the salt there. Okay, we had a question.
With regard to chlorine in water, vitamin C does neutralize it in very small amounts very quickly. If you are worried about GMO corn, however, a lot of it's made from that. You need to find a non-GMO vitamin C source. I use a calcium ascorbate. Works very quickly, right on your skin from a swimming pool, or it can work very quickly in your tap water if you need to go water your garden in the city.
Okay, I didn't know that. That's a good thing to know, that chlorine would be neutralized if you use vitamin C, but make sure it doesn't come from corn, which would be GMO there. Yes?
Since you're already talking about barrels up on stands, the other thing people are doing is collecting rainwater off your roof with a similar setup, and might not be a lot if you don't have big barrels, but something else you can get for water without chlorine and fluoride and all that.
Yes, good point, because here where we get quite a bit of water, we may be able to irrigate just off the water that comes off of your roof. There, it's surprising how much water you can collect off the roof. There, good point. There. Okay. Okay, here's that same little girl planting. Now, we came back the next morning, and half of her broccoli and cabbage plants and what have you had been eaten. They were gone. So we look at these. We took styrofoam cups, cut the bottoms out of them, and put them around. Some we put upside down, some we put this way. But when they were small, like in the previous picture, they were easier to slip over, and that was enough. That was enough to keep the critters off of it. Pardon me? I think there were field mice in this case, but in this particular greenhouse, we had field mice and we had gophers. And I want to point out that these boxes here, these are 2 by 12s, I think, and on the bottom is underneath that is a very heavy gopher wire. Didn't matter, these little critters got in night after night. And of course the sides here are plastic and this is wood here. And those critters ate through the wood, they ate through the plastic. It was just a real hassle to keep them out of there. And tomorrow we'll talk about greenhouses and some of the things we did to eliminate that. They had a wonderful crop here of broccoli and cauliflower and other things there once we figured out how to keep the mice away. When the plants got bigger, the mice didn't bother them there. And for some reason, about here, I put an extra board in here. For some reason, I was able to keep the critters out of this end of the garden for quite a bit of time there. This particular greenhouse was interesting in that we were planting in that. We had a seminar at that particular place. It's high in the mountains in California, about 4,500 foot elevation or so. And so they had very cold nights. And when we were there, we reversed the whole system because the weather forecast said that the first day we were going to have nice weather. And for the rest of the week-long seminar, we had rain and snow predicted. So we went out and did all the outside work the first day and had a good time. Then we came in and did the PowerPoints and what have you afterwards. On the last day, we did go out in the snow while it was snowing and plant a tree like we did out here. Matter of fact, we planted a couple of trees there. And this little greenhouse is about 90 feet long there. This little greenhouse was real close. And this was one of those days when clouds would come over and it would snow, and then there'd be a patch of sunshine, and then another cloud would come over and it would snow some more there. So while we were planting in the snow, I had everybody go through the greenhouse once. Now, the front and the back of that greenhouse open up. It's long, but the ends open up totally. And so we had the front and the back wide open, and I'd have people go in there, and everybody said, wow, it's hot in there, and yet it's snowing outside. There's a lot of energy in nature. We want to talk more about that tomorrow, though. There. Okay, if you will look into your, whoops, where did I put that? Yeah, look in your handout. Thank you, Elizabeth. Look for the formula. 1 quart of vinegar, half a quart of ammonia. Okay, 1 quart of vinegar, a half a quart of ammonia, and then the Coke or Pepsi, doesn't matter.
White vinegar?
Just get cheap white vinegar in the grocery store. Yeah, whatever's inexpensive. So 1 quart of vinegar, a half a quart of ammonia. I apologize for my mistake here. Okay, and if you have it, optional, a quart of ocean water, or put about an ounce of the ocean water salt in it. That's optional though. You don't have to have that. Okay, mix that up and just use it as a drench for plants and leaves and so forth. And you're going to change that plant. This is an old Carrie Reams recipe, and I think you turned me on to this, John. Anyway, here you can see, here's the Coke, there's the ammonia, there's the vinegar there. Okay, here we're demonstrating this. Here's a little fig tree, probably in about 3 gallons of soil there. Now, this is way too small for that fig tree normally to begin producing figs there. So this is in our garden class. That's where we have it, right out there. And so one night I demonstrated this. I do this every year, but I demonstrated this there. So I took this 5 gallons, put in the ammonia, the vinegar, the Coke, and I don't think we even had the ocean water salts in this particular case there. We mix it up. We put water in, of course, and mix it up. And then I drenched that plant. That means I poured it all over that, on the leaves and the stem, and got plenty into the ground around it there. Now, 5 gallons is way, way, way more than that plant needs. That'll do a whole bunch of plants there. But then somebody, when I finished that, somebody said, oh, I didn't quite see that, Lynn, would you please redo that? And so I did it again there. Then the class was over, and this Russian lady came in real late with her kids, and she said, oh, what are you doing, can you show me? So that poor little plant got drenched 3 times that night, okay? I want to tell you that little thing there, that little fig tree had 30 figs on it there. 30 figs on it. Now, that's way too much. I shouldn't have done that much, but anyway.
When in the growth cycle do you want to change, when you suggest changing from vegetative to
Okay, Jim's question is, when do we change from vegetative growth to reproductive growth? When the plant is big enough to try it. If we've got a tomato plant that's 5 inches tall, I don't want it to start putting on tomatoes. I want it to get big enough so that it can hold those tomatoes and do fine there. So let it mature. Today, with hormones and what have you, we could have a little girl, I'm talking about a human being, a little girl could physically have a baby. Let's say she was 8 years old. She could physically have a baby. Now that'd be a sin against that girl and against humanity there. But we can do that. Think of that when you're doing your plants. Let that plant mature. If that little girl would get to be 18 years old or older, her body is strong enough, her mind is good enough and developed enough that she could be a good mother and do just fine. But having babies just doesn't work there. Okay,
Lynn,
yes.
can you explain the chemistry of what is happening with this mixture and why it works to change it to a plant to fruiting?
We're changing the nitrogen. Okay, why does this work? We're changing the nitrogens. We're changing from a nitrate type of growing to an ammonia type of nitrogen. So we're changing the nitrogen. Is that right, John?
Right, and
Okay.
all those things are reproductive. So vinegar is a very strong reproductive, as is the phosphoric acid. And so it's just the elements that are strongly reproductive. Carbon is, and it just has the effect of overwhelming the growth energy that was there, and it switches it more toward the reproductive.
Right, thank you. And you can switch a plant back and forth, and you can see this. This little plant right here, in a week had tiny, tiny little figs a week later there. And 2 weeks later, brought it back to class, and then people could see those little figs growing. Now, because I grow these fig trees, I give them away. That little fig tree is damaged because we forced it to reproduce too soon. So let your plants get big enough. There, yes, we got a question here.
Would this formula work for hydro plants? For hydro?
For hydroponic plants, I don't know why it wouldn't. I think it would, but
You would have to watch carefully the conductivity
Okay.
in your solution and not put too much on.
okay,
And you wouldn't use the salts at all, the sea minerals at all because of that.
okay. Thank you. Yes, ma'am.
Once it's mature, how often would you drench it? I know you said you did it 3 times in a day a ton, but how often would you recommend?
Okay, normally you'd want, if you drenched it like this, you'd want to do it at least twice, about a week apart. Okay, and I do that often with plants. Now, if you're going to spray it on, you might have to do it 3 or 4 times, a week apart there. But drenching it like this, usually twice is enough there. Incidentally, I've got a little lemon tree at home, not much bigger than this, and I put this type of a formula on it. It wasn't this exact formula, but it was like this. And I have 40 lemons on that tiny little tree right now. It's no taller than this. It's about 24 inches tall above the pot, above the soil. And then it's got one branch, because I put some other fertilizer on it, so it's got one branch that's vegetative growth. It's good. In this demonstration garden that we did, I put too much salt. When I first started this, there was almost nothing written about ocean water. And so I had to experiment. And I put too much salt on an early girl tomato plant. I killed it. This garden is 35 minutes away from my house one way. So I was only in that garden once a week. It was actually 2 weeks later before I was back in that garden and could tear that dead plant out of there. Now, when I got there, there were a few ripe tomatoes on this dead plant. And what I expected was a flavor like when we get winter tomatoes, and they're artificially ripened and they taste like watermelon rind or worse. And so I took one of those ripe tomatoes and I ate it, and it was delicious, and I was so surprised. So I took 2 other ripe tomatoes off of that. There were 2 guys working late in the garden that night. And then I picked 2 tomatoes off the early girl row next to it on either side. So I had these 6 tomatoes, and I took it up to these guys working late in the garden. Now, they didn't know which of these. I just said, this is 1, 2, and 3, or A, B, and C, I forget, and said, I want you to taste these and tell me which you think is better. And both guys said, wow, that is a fabulously good tomato. Nothing wrong with this one or this one, but that is fabulously good. And it was the ocean water that did that. Now, this plant is sitting there dead, and it has some hands of green tomatoes. And I thought, well, this is interesting. I'm going to take some of those hands of green tomatoes home. And I took them home, put them on the kitchen counter. They ripen from the largest to the next, right on down for the next, I don't know, 6, 8 weeks even. Do you know that every one of those tomatoes was absolutely delicious, and that there was no rot whatsoever in any of those tomatoes? So that kind of told me what I should do and shouldn't do, because obviously I put too much salt on and I killed the plant. Let me tell you a story. Okay, I'll tell you a story and then we'll quit. We'll dismiss here. I had a friend that brought me a couple of tomato plants, and they were these little pear-shaped yellow tomatoes. Now, they taste to me, in the middle of summer, they taste to me like awful winter tomatoes. I don't like them. But my wife's a caterer, and she likes different flavors and shapes and colors and so forth. There. Anyway, I grew these. I grew them in an earth box. Winter came, and I cut those tomatoes back to about a foot above the ground. I took that earth box and put it in the garage. Now, the window was high, but somehow or other that one plant survived the winter. So spring came and I put it outside, and it began to grow, but it got blight just really bad. And I thought, oh, it's time to throw that out and get something else. And, oh, wait a minute, I've been reading about ocean water and what it can do. So I put on some mint lighter fertilizer, which is chemical fertilizer, and I put on the ocean water, and I put it stronger than what I might now, but I put on a pretty good dose of it. That plant was about this high, with a few leaves on the top, and in about 1 week's time it began to sprout out all over with new green growth. In another week it was covered with yellow flowers, more yellow flowers than I've ever seen on a tomato plant before. And now, then it really did begin to grow pretty good, and matter of fact, it grew about 13 feet, and so I had to lay it over on some rose bushes on the side of the garage there. But what happened is when those tomatoes began to ripen in the fall, those little yellow tomatoes that just taste awful were delicious. They were very good. That plant was very, very healthy and did very, very well. But you've got to get the nutrient on, I think, way before what we're doing here. All right, we've got to close because some people have to go to work tomorrow. I will stay here and answer questions if you want to talk, if there's something else I can help you with. Thank you very much. We'll see you tomorrow.